Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Wandering Podcast, where we take advisement from outside the box. I'm Rihanna Ritter, your host. I'm an intuitive, sexuality, and authentic expression coach. Are you an accomplished professional who plays the part of having it all figured out? Who's strong for everyone else, but feels lonely, misunderstood, like you can't tell anybody the truth about how stressed you are, how not passionate you are about your life and all that you've created? I guide my clients to deep, lasting fulfillment. I re-engage them with their bodies, their pleasure, their desire. I help them align to enjoy fulfillment and prosperity in all areas of their lives. Today, I'm joined by Michelle Casazza, an intuitive business and life coach and a sailor. She's the founder of Matria. She guides women in corporate to build aligned and fulfilling lives and careers. Welcome, Michelle. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so tell me how you got into sailing, and is that part of your coaching, or is that just something that is a part of who you are?
It's such a good question. It's all of the above. It was something that I did a little bit growing up. And then as I was dealing with a lot of sadness in my corporate chapter, I was looking for ways to align my time with things that I loved. And I sat back and I thought, what is it that I love? And the top three things that came to mind were sailing, travel, and food. Like those for me, that's the trifecta. And so it was actually during COVID. I was working from home in my corporate job, totally burned out, totally depressed. And we all know the COVID days. And I found this company that I had been following for years who planned week-long sailing charters all around the world with private chefs. So it hit my top three, like boom, boom, boom. And I got really involved with them. I started out with lessons, and then I went on a trip, and then I left my corporate job and I started working for them. And sailing's become a really big part of my life. It was a big part of my healing journey, going from, a really sad and depressed woman working in corporate to someone who feels alive and aligned and fulfilled with her life. And I really have sailing to thank. And so a couple of probably about 6 months ago, I was realizing that I had my life over here and I had my business over here, and it was starting to feel like I was at odds with each other. There was some tension there. And I thought, why am I trying to keep sailing, which is such a big part of my life, separate when it was a huge part of my journey? So I started to integrate. And so now I incorporate sailing in a number of ways. I host retreats for corporate women to get out of the office and on the water. They're called Divine Feminine Sailing Retreats. And I also talk a lot about sailing and coaching. I use metaphors. I talk about my healing experience. And I get women on the water whenever I can to experience that relaxation, that awe, that joy that comes from being on the water.
Wow, that's beautiful. Yeah, it's really hard to, when you're in corporate and you're sitting indoors most of the time. Maybe you're traveling, but you're not necessarily out in nature. And
Mhm.
sailing is not just relaxing and being in nature, but it's also invigorating. There's a little bit of danger to it because you're on the water and it's unpredictable. I mean, there's some level of control, but
Mhm.
yeah, if you want to expand on how that what you see with women who go on these retreats or how
Yeah.
you incorporate it.
I think there's two things, maybe three. There's nature, there's facing our fears to grow, and there's also the concept of presence. So I'll start with nature. And this was something that hit me in the face on my first sailing trip. I was still working at my corporate job, and I spent 2 weeks in Antigua sailing on board a catamaran. And maybe like the third or fourth night, I realized that the moon was changing. And I was like, what? You could see the cycles of the moon every night, and it changes a little bit each night. And I thought, how insane that I am a grown woman and did not know this. I did not even realize that this was happening around me every night. The cycles that nature goes through, the moon itself, which as feminine beings, we're so connected to the lunar cycle. And at the time, I knew nothing of it. And I was just shocked. And so that for me was this demarcation between not being connected to nature and craving nature and understanding the beautiful role that nature plays in our lives and in our healing journey. The next thing is facing fears. So many women I talk to are like, there's two themes. I hear, I don't know a lot, and I hear like, but I'm scared. And it's not typically those exact words, but that's the vibe I'm getting. And so how do we deal with fear? Well, we have to build a muscle to help us, learn how to face our fears and get used to feeling that risk, feeling that uncertainty, feeling that being afraid and going for something anyway, right? Doing something anyway. And so by being on the water and by being on the sailboat, you're really faced with those moments, not all the time, but throughout the day, right? And you start to realize that there's a level of comfort that you get. For me personally, I used to be afraid as soon as the boat would heel over. Like I would just brace myself and I would look around and I'd make sure I had my jacket on. I was like, oh my gosh, we're healing. And for anyone who doesn't sail, that's like, this is when you're sailing flat, but when you're healing, the boat starts to turn on an angle. And just with more reps and more experience and learning to trust the boat and to trust my crew, to trust myself, that fear went away. I actually started to crave that excitement, right? Like I'm ready for those situations that used to terrify me. I want more of them. Right. And it's not that I don't have fear anymore. It's that I am used to stepping into courage, and I'm used to stepping up to the plate when that experience comes my way. I think I mentioned three things. The third,
Presence.
thank you so much.
Yeah.
Since uh, there's nothing like being on the boat and putting your phone down. And I realized that the summer I was taking lessons. We were on a relatively small boat, 36-foot classic Choi Lee here in New York Harbor. And there were 4 women who were in the class and a captain / instructor. We'd get on board. I would put my phone down below and I wouldn't get it probably until the sunset, just to snap a few pictures, if I'm being honest. But otherwise, I wasn't on my phone the whole time. And, it's about 3 solid hours of being present on the water, in conversation, using your hands, being mindful of what's going on around you, noticing things like the wind shift, the sun setting, the tides and the currents, noticing like how your crew is communicating, and, you're all learning together. And so all of these different factors calling us to be present. Well, what I noticed coming off that boat is I felt like all of my stress had washed away. My head felt clear. I felt so grounded and present. And I started to realize it was that time where I'm not distracted by my phone. I'm not distracted by what's going on around me. I'm physically, everything, my mind, my physical body, it's all here present in the exact moment that we're living. And there's nothing like it. It was really similar to meditation in some ways, right? Where all the distractions go away and you allow yourself to have space to think, to have to allow your creativity to come through, have creative ideas come up. And it's really an amazing experience, especially when you go from sitting at your desk, being in a very masculine space, in a very like get things done mindset, to step back and be in flow is such a gift.
Yeah, absolutely. That it's interesting. I was just talking with a friend about finances and, integrating masculine and feminine within ourselves, and how, I led a retreat this past weekend with women, and we, touched on subjects of different toxic relationships with men, and the it was a common theme, and what we came to was like, okay, yes, these have been our experiences, but that doesn't mean that there's no good masculine out there. When you're used to only seeing that, then that's all you'll find. It's all you'll look for, because you don't know how to recognize the other. But how that comes into play with us being, to have a lot of success in corporate, I had to be very masculine. I had to be very much in command, control, get things done. There really wasn't room for flow.
There's
And
not.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
rarely.
And then that, go ahead.
No, please. I was going to call out a synchronicity between us that I noticed just before. We're both accountants.
Oh,
My corporate
wow.
experience at a big four accounting firm.
Oh,
So
okay.
in that masculine, numbers based, get things done, follow the timeline mindset
Yes.
that you're speaking of.
Yeah, and everything is kind of a projection into the future. We're looking at the past so that we can deal with the future. There's not very much presence,
Right.
and then it's a lot of trends, and then so when we as women, as like my friend and I were talking, and I was like, we were never taught, when we get into financial places of financial struggle, we have to look at the fact that our generational patterns for the last several thousand years have been that we had a person, a man who was the masculine container that held the finances and kept all that stuff together. Now we have decided to be independent women, and we're, on our own, and we're trying to integrate for the first time in our lives being our own container. And so a lot of women are finding that incredibly challenging. And of course we are. Like, I was taught to get married. I wasn't taught to be my own container. I wasn't taught to integrate the masculine and feminine within me. So I was either going to be this feminine person who was dependent on a man to be a container for me, or I was going to be the woman that I became, which is a very masculine type A corporate woman. And so trying to integrate the two, especially women in corporate, I can see where that flow and presence can be missing. And I also ended up in burnout from that.
And it's no surprise, because when we are imbalanced, and you're right, that that model that we've all been living in, which is we're in a masculine society. The corporate world is driven by masculine traits, and it's not gender, right? Like, it is truly about energetics. We all have both within us. We all experience both in our environments, in our relationships, in our businesses. And when we are in this space that's very masculine all the time, we lose touch of the feminine. And it's not to say that the masculine's bad. It's to say that we need to let the feminine rise to meet the masculine, because when they're in balance and when we're in flow and harmony, that's when the magic happens. That's when we can both dream up something that is so true to who we are, and then also execute and get it done. Right? That's when we can show up at work ready to, get things finished, but also step back and bring people in with us and take people along for the ride. So it's really that balance. And oh my gosh, I was so imbalanced in my old life, totally imbalanced. And I didn't have the vocabulary to explain it, right? Like I now know that I was very much living my mind. I was disconnected from my body. I was very much focused on my to-do list, both the micro to-do list of the day and the macro to-do list of my life, right? And I was never thinking, well, what would make today more enjoyable? There could experience love, pleasure, happiness in my life. Never was that a thought, right? It was how can I get my coffee the fastest so that I can be the first at my seat, open my computer and get things done so that I can have the most productive day I've had all week. That was the mindset. And of course, we lead to burnout, right? We lead to unhappiness. Our bodies rebel. It's the bodies that rebel first. I don't know where you felt the rebellion first. It was definitely in my body.
Yes. Yeah, I was recruited by another company with a lot more money, and driving to work every day, just stomach pain the whole way. And I lasted a year, and I was like, if I continue this, I'm going to get actually sick. Like, if my body is having this strong of response. And I'm actually surprised I was able to connect with my body enough. I mean, it was obviously a strong enough pain, but I wasn't sick. I hadn't manifested a real illness at that point. But had I let it continue, I would have.
Yeah. You reminded me of something that Oprah said that I love. She says, life happens in whispers, and we have to listen to the whispers. Because if we don't, they become yells. Things start to scream at you. And so your body, it was beyond the whisper phase, right? I'm sure there were whispers. I'm sure there was the clenched jaw and the stressful days, and the stomach ache every once in a while, right? Those were the whispers. And then it got louder, and you got it before it was fully screaming. Luckily, I hope.
Yeah.
But it was getting louder, right? And when we start to become more in tune with our bodies, which is very much a feminine practice, we start to understand the cycle that our body goes through, as women being on a 28-day cycle connected back to the lunar cycle. When we start to understand that, when we start to, understand the seasonality happening around us and act accordingly, we're very in tune, right? So we'll start to notice something very early, and take care of that before it becomes even a whisper, before it becomes something that's yelling at us, knocking us over the head, telling us to change.
Yes, that's really beautiful. And that's something that our society has definitely shunned and taken, value away from. There's, if you're at work, you don't call out because you are on your moon, or like
right.
Women are, because we deeply feel things, we become unreliable employees, right?
Mm-hmm.
so,
Right.
so
Exactly.
Having to make room in our lives to have the freedom to actually have that feminine part of ourselves being here, it's going to be difficult to do when you're working in a job and somebody else is in control of you, and they don't have the kind of company culture that recognizes what humans are. We're animals. We're vain animals. We've got big egos, but we are animals. We are nature. And so to try to disconnect us completely from nature really just disempowers us and makes us not trust ourselves, not trust our bodies. And then we can't hear the wisdom. We're more likely to be compliant. And I don't think, the big picture in Western culture was to make everybody into a slave, but it is something that happened kind of over time, little by little. And in some cases, there was certainly an intention of like, we need people to fall in line and do exactly what we say, because that's how we retain power. But that intention may have been lost over thousands of years, and now it's just a practice of, we just keep doing that same thing.
Right.
We're starting to wake up.
We are.
Go ahead.
And really it happens with people individually before society will change, before organizations will change, before our culture will fully change, which is why the work that we're all doing individually, healing ourselves, healing others in our network, is so important. My mind's going in a few directions. You're reminding me of the concept that I read about in Sapiens, which is that great book about the history of humans, the history of Homo sapiens. And they talk about the different revolutions that have happened, which have been key advancements in society and historically have been looked at as really positive steps forward. The agricultural revolution, where we were able to grow food at a much faster rate than ever before, the industrial revolution, the information revolution. And the book really questions, well, what was the benefit to Homo sapiens? What was the benefit to humans? And in many cases, the benefit was actually much different than how it's been portrayed historically. With the agricultural revolution, our food is less nutritious, is full of chemicals, is not serving our bodies. The Industrial Revolution is what created the 9-to-5 work schedule that we all now adhere to in corporate America, which, as we know, is built for men, built for a man's cycle, very, unforgiving of a woman's cycle that we spoke about. And so I just love that question of like, these advancements, which aren't that, have not been around for that long, are they truly serving us? And they're not going away. And so we then have to ask ourselves, well, how do we interact with this modern world that we've created, that we're living in a way that is still honoring our bodies and honoring our, our soul, because we're all souls having a human experience. And I'll pause there. There's one other thing you're making me think of as you were talking, my brain was just firing. But yeah, I do think it puts the responsibility in our hands to how we live our lives.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, and the way we spend our money is really the way we vote, right? Because now people are questioning whether elections are fair, whether things are being counted right. So, okay, well, if we feel powerless there, then, the fewer places we can feel powerless, the better. We want to try to remember that we can make a difference and we do have a choice and a power, and one of the ways is the way we spend our money. And so if we're spending money in places that nourish us and support narratives of embracing life holistically and treating us all as souls having a human experience instead of just a piece of a machine that's getting one person's goal met or a few people's goal met.
Right. Was that part of your discussion in the finance retreat you mentioned?
I didn't do a finance retreat. It was more of a sexual empowerment retreat. The theme was embracing our sexual selves, clearing body shame and dropping our masks. Because as women, we tend to get together and we are like, oh, yes, everything's perfect. Aren't you? Yeah. Yep. The kids are great. The job's great. Everything's good. I'm not tired. I'm not frustrated. I'm super fulfilled. The sex is great. Yeah. It's like very obligatory, right? Sex in many marriages for women.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, very different from a finance retreat.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I must have misunderstood you earlier. I thought you mentioned doing something related to money, but all the more interesting to talk about, really embodiment and embodying what it is that we're dealing with, what we're feeling, and honoring that. So that sounds like a way more interesting experience.
Yes. Money came into it. The reason you thought that was because I was talking with a friend about that retreat, and then that money aspect came up, and because we were talking about pricing and the different things for our retreats going forward. So that's where those two got mixed, but they're all mixed always. Like
they're always connected.
Yeah.
All connected. I mean, our ability to experience pleasure is connected with our ability to own our financial freedom. It's
absolutely
connected. And we're not taught that. And I think if you had told me that, 5 years ago, I would have laughed and walked away. But now I know it's
uncomfortable, right? You would be uncomfortable hearing the word pleasure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's interesting to watch women, like actually even men too. When I say the words pleasure or intimacy, their minds automatically go to sex. And like there are so many areas of our lives where pleasure and intimacy are important. Intimacy is imperative in business. It doesn't mean physical intimacy. It means like, are we deeply connected? Are we talking about more than surface level things? Are our hearts open? Are we trusting each other? Are we really here and present? It's so many people are approaching sex without intimacy. I mean, in my marriage, I was dissociated from my body. One of the things that I don't expect this to go the sexuality direction, but one of the things that is true across the world is that about half of women have never had an orgasm, or they don't through intercourse. And so
wild stat. Half.
Yeah. And I was able to orgasm, but I did so by dissociating and not being present with my partner. So it was like, and he could feel that, like, it became this transactional act. Like, I'm just doing this because I feel obligated, because I was taught that that's what good wives do. And we're both just getting the thing done, but we don't really have an emotional connection. And sex is not very good without an emotional connection.
No, it's sure not. And it's when you talk about just getting it done, those are the same words I used earlier to explain being in the masculine, right? Yeah. And we need the combination of the masculine and feminine to really have that deep connected experience. And sounds like it was a very, masculine on both sides. And that's kind of like, you're just butting up against each other. You're not even there. Two ships passing in the night. It's like, no, let's dance,
Yeah.
let's flow, let's experience this. And so, yeah, I think it's a really interesting use of words there. Just getting it done.
Yeah. That's true. I was also very focused on my to-do list, like you were, you
Yeah,
know,
always.
yeah, it becomes such a habit for, and it's really interesting how the feminine presence can be the one that calls that intimacy out of a masculine presence, that it can be like, hey, we're here, we're connected, there's more than just this physical act. And then it can become, either way, whoever calls it out of the other person, it becomes a much more impactful, magical thing when we think about, like you mentioned, our own healing journeys. As we heal ourselves, like it collectively,
We heal others. Yeah.
yeah. And the act of sex between two individuals, when it's a real union and there's a real intimacy and emotional connection, it's more powerful than just two people doing that.
Yeah. This might sound like a pivot, but I'm going to bring it back around. I work with a lot of women who are in corporate and they're deciding, do I stay or do I go? And I never want someone to leave a career out of fear or out of desperation. I always want it to be from a place of knowing, a place of love, a place of growth if they decide to leave. And so when I work with women who are still in their corporate setting, we have to acknowledge that the environment they're in is very masculine. The way they're showing up is typically very masculine. And so when you think, if you're living in a city, if you're in a corporate space, if you're managing a to-do list in any way, like that is the masculine energy. And so I always work with women to find out, where are you feeling feminine in your life? And how can we bring more of that in? So I'll share with you and to our listeners something that I share with my clients all the time, because typically we're out of balance, right? So assuming you're out of balance, assuming you're in the masculine more than the feminine, how can you easily get into the feminine? Well, I tell everyone to do a divine feminine hour once a week. Mark this on your calendar. It's your time. You cannot schedule anything over it. It is a time for you to do something that connects you to your femininity. Some ideas: take a warm bath, go to a dance class, get out your journal, light some candles, make a meal in the kitchen, whatever it is for you. Usually it involves a robe for me. So there's a robe, there's lotion, there's a bath, there's something relaxing in that way that helps us reconnect with our bodies, with our creativity, with our intuition, with the soft side of who we are, right? Wear something that you feel beautiful in. Do your hair in a really beautiful way that you love, right? This is all for you. It's self-love in its best form. And it's connecting to the feminine. And it's really just a special time, because if we're in our masculine every day, all day, we're going to get out of balance. But I use this as a tool to help rebalance. And you can do it, if you've got the time, once a day for an hour, yes, but at the very least once a week. Give yourself that time and really sink into your femininity.
Yeah, it's kind of like dating yourself, right?
Dating yourself, yeah, without the pressure.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I'll take myself out to dinner, take myself out to a movie. Um, yeah, do something that really, maybe it's writing poetry, maybe it's just dancing
Yes.
in front of a mirror or just by yourself. It can be, it can be anything, but I mean, I'll advocate for self-pleasure, but a lot of people find that really extreme because religion has taught that that's sinful or whatever.
Right.
But it is also like not something that costs money. You can do it in your own house, your own time, and it's really a good way to figure out where you are emotionally. Like, what do you think about your body? What do you feel about your body? To really gauge how much pleasure you're willing to hold. It can also just be eating a piece of something that is delicious to you
Mhm.
and actually being present for it, smelling it, tasting it, feeling the texture.
Yes. Yeah, that's a beautiful form of meditation. Mindful eating. I mean, I once did this really interesting yoga for eating class, and we spent about 15 minutes eating one walnut. I've never tasted a better walnut in my life. I think about eating walnuts. I'm like, I'm eating this too fast because I'm clearly not getting the flavor that's there.
Yeah.
And just that presence, using all of your senses to experience the moment. It's like the sailing metaphor earlier, right? Like all of the distractions go away. We're fully present. You're seeing the texture of the nut. You're smelling is it a roasted? Is it salted? Is it just a walnut? Like, what is it that you're eating? And the flavor then, when you finally do eat it, it's like out of control. So
Yeah,
you can
absolutely.
apply that to everything in your life, being more present, being more, aware of what's going on around you, using all of your senses. The thing that I hate the most, I live in New York, and what I hate is that everyone's turned into a zombie. Everyone's walking around in their phone, and I'm no saint. Like, I catch myself doing this too. But to look around and see, 8 out of 10 people in their phone while they're walking with their heads down, it's like, it's just sad. It's really
Yeah.
sad. So yeah, we need to be more present. And
Yeah. And looking where we're going and feeling the air that's out there and smelling what's there and hearing it. It's so interesting how we just get hypnotized by our phones and
hypnotized. Yeah.
yeah, the
Mm-hmm.
constant processing of information.
Yeah.
So if we talk about, if you're helping women in corporate either stay because it's the aligned choice or to go out and create their own thing because that's the aligned choice, you know, you're working with women who are primarily very used to being in their masculine and they know how to kind of like do the things, the really tangible things to start a business or to maintain like I need to start an entity. I need to, have HR policies in place. If I'm going to hire people, I know when the tax deadlines are, especially for accountants. But
Right.
I know all these ways to have a container for a business. But then the challenge for these women is how do I not become a workaholic in my own business? And I think you had touched on how you were keeping the two separate, the sailing with the business. And then when I became an entrepreneur, like it was still accounting at first, but I became a total slave and workaholic to it because I found that I was deriving my self-worth from my outside performance. Yes. My perception of my outside performance. It didn't even, one of the funny things that I had going on in my mind was that my clients expected me to be at my computer all day doing their accounting, and I had no right to be out in the world enjoying anything. Between the hours of 9 and 5, they expected me to be chained to my desk doing because that's what we learn as employees.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So when you're seeing
balance.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that you touched on the identity, right? Like our self-worth being connected to our productivity. That is what we've been taught. We've been taught that the number of hours you build, the number of projects you finish, the number of meetings you go to, that defines success, right? And what is success? It's having money, house, whatever. There's so much that goes on through a healing journey of looking at those limiting beliefs and deciding which ones are truly yours and which ones were put there by society. And you get to rewrite your own belief system. And so in doing that, we rewrite, what does success mean for me? How do I define success? For me, success is knowing your gifts and sharing them with others. That's success. For you, it may be something different, but being really clear in what that is a big part of this journey. Another piece is, if my self-worth is not connected to productivity, what is it connected to? How do I value myself? What does it mean to love myself and love myself fully? And there's a lot of work that goes on there, understanding our shadow self, dismantling these beliefs and getting really clear on just being who you truly are is worth loving, is worth celebrating. That is what we're all here to be doing. And anything else is a distraction, right? And we live in a society. There's a reality to the world we live in. And so how do we go through this journey and learn about our gifts, learn about who we truly are, and then harness them to build a living for ourselves, to serve others, to create something that we're really passionate about, that we love doing, that we wake up on Monday and say, I can't wait to start my day, right? Not something that we're, traveling to escape from, but we're present and excited to be part of. And yes, I was definitely an escapism traveler for a long time. I like where I am. And so we go through all this work to reconstruct a life that we love to live. And it takes a lot of intention. It takes a lot of meaningful exploration of ourselves, of the lives we've already built. And it could sound overwhelming, but what I always say is every small choice we make, from what we're drinking during, what you drink during the day versus, what time you go to bed at night, every little decision that you make is bringing you closer into alignment or further away. And so we don't have to change the world overnight. We just have to make the next right choice for ourselves.
Yeah. And really getting in touch with our desires can be so difficult at the very beginning of this journey, right? I didn't know what I wanted. I was like, I want at the time what I was told to want: the car, the house, the kids, the marriage. And then when I found out, this isn't fulfilling me. So there's something in me that is, I had to admit to myself, what's the common denominator here? Past failed relationships, jumping from one career or job to another, moving a lot. Like, what am I running from? Running from that inner critic that's always in my head telling me that I'm not good enough and I'm not enough. And so when you can actually get in touch with what you really want and confess it to yourself, so many people are ashamed of what they really want. Like, we're told that it's audacious and ridiculous and not practical, right? So how do you find that challenging with your clients in corporate at first, or do a lot of them really know what they really want?
I love this question. I'm gonna answer it twice. All of my clients know what they really want.
Oh, wow.
They always start by saying, I don't know.
Okay.
It's I was just talking to someone about this earlier today. It's the craziest phenomenon. It's, I'll ask the question, what is it that you want in this next chapter? And almost everybody physically gets smaller and says, I don't know. And they look away. They look to the sky. They look to the ground. I don't know. And I ask a series of questions, and within minutes, we are at the exact answer that they've always known and have been afraid to say. So that's why I say everyone, all of my clients all know. We all know what we truly want. It's within us.
Yeah.
For some of us, it takes a little bit longer to take the layers off, right? The expectation, the guilt or the shame, the self-hate that we need to turn into self-love. For others, it's just navigating a few nuanced questions until we say, yeah, no, that is what I want. I may be scared. I may still have fear around it. I may not fully believe I can have it yet. That takes time. But we know, and we reach that knowing very quickly.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. It's allowing ourselves to want what we want. It's learning to not put society's opinion of it ahead of our own desire for it.
I think I'm going to start printing out permission slips to my clients, because so often they're like, this session was life-changing. I'm like, all I did was give you permission that you didn't need from me. You did not need, but you seem to need some sort of validation now. So I gave it to you.
Yes.
You're off to the right.
Yeah. And it's so great to have a guide who can validate what you're feeling and give you that permission, especially because we're a culture that's addicted to needing permission. We don't know much else.
Yes. And navigating these transitions can be really challenging. So when I left my job, I did not have a coach. I didn't even think that this was a concept. I never once in my mind thought I should hire a coach. I honestly just was kind of floundering for a while post corporate, but doing some really cool things while I was floundering. So it kind of extended my timeline. And then all of a sudden one day I thought, this has gone too far. Like, I am almost a year out of corporate. I have no idea what I'm doing with my life. I'm sailing on all these random trips, which are all amazing, but like, where is this leading me? I knew I didn't want to be a full-time yachts person. I didn't want to work on a boat full-time. And so I thought I need to, because that's where my life was heading if I didn't make any changes. So I thought I need to do something. And so I actually built out my foundational coaching program for myself. I didn't know that's what it was going to be, but it turned out to be something that I now use with all of my clients to get really clear on first who I was, then what I wanted, and then building a plan to actually bring that to life. And what's interesting is I think that had I done that when I was still in corporate, it would have crumbled because I was still very much in that masculine. I was still very much in the to-do list mindset. But things that I learned along the way, along my journey, were very feminine. I learned a lot of different healing modalities. I learned about energy work. I learned about incorporating Ayurvedic principles into my life. And all of this helped me then blend a masculine idea of a plan with the feminine idea of our intuition, right? Who are we?
Yeah.
What do we want? Okay, now let's go get it. And so that's the foundational program that got me out of the trenches, and I use with my clients all the time.
Yeah. So it's so common to go from, like, it's a pendulum, right? You go from this really rigid, extreme masculine lifestyle to then like, this isn't working. I'm going to swing all the way over here and do this feminine flow thing. And then I'm like, okay, there are major parts of my masculine identity that I'm missing. Like, I miss that really brought safety to my life and structure to it. And so I think that's actually a gift for women that have been raised the way we have and have gone into a really structured corporate kind of environment versus a woman who has never had that and who has only been able to get that from a masculine being.
Yeah.
For them to learn that whole set of, it's like, I can't even imagine, because that's not the journey that I've taken. but I see both. I had women on my retreat that were the way that I was, and I had women on my retreat that were the other way. And it's just like, either way, we're both learning a totally different skill set that is super challenging, and to try to blend them.
Yeah, it's so funny you say that. It was definitely a pendulum swing moment. Like when I got, a year out of corporate, I was sailing all over the world. And there was this quote that I love, which is, if you don't know where you're going, you'll end up someplace else. And I used to love that quote because it reminded me of a sense of adventure, right? When I would travel solo, I did a lot of solo travel in my corporate days because I would just book a trip and go somewhere to escape any chance I got. And it just reminded me of like wandering along the streets somewhere in a foreign city and ending up someplace unexpected. So I loved that quote when I was in my masculine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then when I was in my feminine, it started to turn and I started to hear it like, if you don't know where you're going, you'll end up in some weird places. And I totally did. It was like, why am I on this boat? And like, what am I doing here? And, where am I in the world? And what's my purpose? And like all the bigger questions started to come in. And so that's kind of a cornerstone question that I share with people, or quote that I share with people, because we need to know where we're going in order to get there. Like that's the number one thing, know where you're going. And to do that, to find out where you're going, to choose your destination and pop it into the GPS at a place where you're both, clear and balanced. That's the dream. That's the dream.
Yeah.
Not when you're desperate, not when you're like euphoric and living the best day of your life either. It's like, when you're balanced, that's when you're, able to think clearly and plan out a future for yourself.
Yeah, and that comes into play in manifestation as well. If you are, you know, because we get our fear comes up, like we have our dream and our desire, and we are speaking into that, and you know, trying maybe affirmations. And when we're doing affirmations, we want to make sure we're doing ones that don't argue with our subconscious, like because then you're giving that GPS two different directions. If your subconscious is afraid to go where you're trying to go, but your conscious mind is like, that's where I want to go, that's two different directions to the GPS. So we got to get them on the same page. And that healing work is
Wow.
where that's where that comes in. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So do you have manifestation work with your clients? Does that come into it, or?
It does. You know, typically we start very basic. We start with understanding our morning routine. And from there, I typically do recommend some sort of meditation. So every one of my coaching sessions starts with a guided, personalized meditation. A lot of my clients haven't yet built out a meditation practice for themselves, so I like to start there. And then we start to talk about manifestation probably towards the end of our container together, which is typically a 6-month program. And I say that because the first few months when you're working with someone who's just left or recently in the corporate space, there's a lot that you have to unpack first, right? And if you think about, I'll just use a travel metaphor. Imagine getting home from a trip and it's been this big, intense, packed trip, and you have this massive suitcase and you put it on the floor and someone says, "Are you ready for the next trip?" I'm like, I haven't even unpacked my suitcase yet, right?
Yeah.
That next trip is our next chapter. And the suitcase is everything that we need to unpack from our last experience, right? It's acknowledging the good things that we've learned. It is understanding the lessons. It's also healing from any trauma, any beliefs that we picked up in that time period that really aren't ours. The stress, the burnout, the physical exhaustion, right? The heightened levels of stress in our body. Those are all things that we need to unpack, put away, and heal from. We need to get to a place where we're able to regulate our nervous system before we can look forward and say, what do I truly want in this next chapter? So that's why manifestation comes later. Now, I have a lot of manifestation practices myself, and the ones that I typically share with my clients are ones around healing our subconscious, right? Healing all the inner child work that we do that really helps us believe that we are worthy of what we truly want. And there's a number of things we talk about. Number one, I always have people look for expanders, right? When you're manifesting something, do you truly believe that you can have it? Have you seen other people have it? We need to help our subconscious learn that it's possible, right? And so I always encourage women to find expanders. So if you're, looking to start a virtual business where you have, what's a good example? Where you can live in Europe and have massive income. Great. That's totally doable. Find yourself an example of a woman who's done it and follow her. Watch her content, get to know what her story was, and just show your subconscious that it's possible. Right. So expanders are really important. And I also do, me personally, when I'm manifesting for something, I imagine myself. I do this right before bed at night. So right as I'm falling asleep, I imagine myself already having it. I think about what it would feel like physically. I think about what my emotions would be. I think about what I'll be wearing, who I'll be with, what I'll be eating, whatever the manifestation is. I get really specific and I aim to fall asleep while thinking about it. And it's amazing because things then just happen.
Yes. Yes.
You're like, oh, okay. And all that being said, I still feel like I'm learning so much about manifestation.
It's a practice, right? You can know how to do it and still not do it well.
True.
because of the all that subconscious, any whatever dissonance that might be there. But yeah, I do something similar, a five senses meditation, which is pretty similar. It's also like, what am I tasting, what am I smelling, what am I hearing, what am I feeling, like make it really real, so that, and then the practice of doing it right as you're falling asleep, like then you've cleared your mind and you've ended on a positive note, and you're much more likely, you'll find it in your reality, and you'll be there doing the thing and having the thing, and then you'll be like, wait, how did this happen?
Yeah, we do I do a lot of visioning work, which is kind of a precursor for manifestation, where I guide meditations to help women envision what their life would be like, right? And this is part of the answering the I don't know, or changing the I don't know to, I know exactly. And I do that because I've learned that I've had very specific visions that have come to fruition. And when I've had them, I think, that doesn't make sense. How's that going to happen? Who's that person? What is that? How did I end up there? Like, and then I'll physically find myself in that vision months, years later. And it's like, whoa, I created this moment in my mind 2 years ago. And it's like, it's shocking, actually.
It's like deja vu, right?
It's almost like deja vu. It's like, I mean, imagine if you're someone who can draw or likes to sketch, imagine sketching out, a day, a moment, and then all of a sudden you're living it. It's just wild. And so I'm using that vision technique, because when we're connected, and when we're doing a coaching session, we are connected, and we're calling in intuition. We're calling in our own intuition and divine guidance. And that's an amazing moment to have these visions. And so we're truly connected to creation. And then we're able to see that down the road. It's incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are, we have the divine within us. That's the spark of life that is why we're alive, that animates our body, right? And we'll have people who, are doubt manifestation, call it magic, call it something silly, like that's just your imagination, that's just a coincidence. And it's like, no, it's literally just getting the subconscious mind and the conscious mind on board and noticing what is already out there that we want, that we just thought we couldn't have before.
Well said.
Yeah. Do you have anything you want to leave the audience with? Any last tip or practice? And then tell us where to find you.
Sure. I think the last tip I would say is that if you're listening to this podcast, you're likely already on a journey. And I just applaud you for that, because it's challenging. It can be really hard to go through this healing and growth journey, and just encourage you to keep going, because knowing yourself and loving yourself is the best gift you can give yourself. So I wish you all luck on that. And you can find me on Instagram at Join Matria, JoinMatria, and at joinmatria.com. I send out a weekly newsletter on Fridays, providing all different tips, coaching tricks, and inspiration for your journey. So I'd love to have you follow along there.
Amazing. And we'll put that information in the show notes. And yeah, this is the beauty of self-love. It really gets you. It's not some buzz phrase that people are using. If you want the life that you desire, it starts with loving yourself, so that you can create out there what you really love. Thank you for being here, Michelle. It's been wonderful.
It's been wonderful. It really has been.